just right now. All right, so for today, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give a general overview of the reports and then a few of the kind of tips and tricks that I've learned from creating several of them. And then I didn't receive any special requests on ones that people wanted to see updated, which is fine. I know we have several of them out there, and some of them just come up, and as you have them, you send them over. Being that things, have calmed down a little bit in terms of, Salesforce issues and things like that, you will notice probably more of when you send me something and, ask me to take a look at it. I will probably either ask if we can do a quick Skype call and go over it together, or instruct you on how to make the changes and let you go ahead and do it. Because one of the things that, more than anything, when it comes to reports, just trial and error actually teaches you quite a bit. I have learned more just from attempting things and failing and then trying something else. And a lot of times that's the best way to learn with these, because we do have a ton of objects and a ton of variables and a ton of fields. It is, it's quite a bit to take in, and there is no special cheat sheet that has a list of every single thing in the system. And while that would be great to have with all the changes that we make, it's not something that would probably be as useful as you would hope, because we would have probably a 90-page document of all the fields that we have. So that being said, as I mentioned before, when we think about the differences between the list views and the reports are the ones that, can go over multiple objects. So if you need quotes with contingencies, if you need something to do with financing and quotes, anything like that, you would want to do a report. Some of the things that people don't often think about, the next one that I'm going to be creating, that I've had a request for, is looking at, on the product object, what are the options that are ordered most frequently. So kind of a frequency report on the options, obviously more for, design and operations, but things like that is where you would want to start building a report. And the first thing to do is to think about what it is that you're trying to build. So what are the objects that you're looking for? What fields do you need, and where do those live? And if you're not sure, again, I tend to go back to looking at, all right, I want to see these fields, where do they live? If I go on a quote and I look at the page layout and I see it there, I know that if I build a report that includes the quote object, everything that I see on that page is going to be something I can select on that report. So that's sometimes the easiest way. If I don't know exactly what object a field lives on, find it in Salesforce. If you know you see it when you're looking at contingencies because you're looking for the expiration date of contingencies, that is on the contingency object, because you have to click on contingencies to see it, and it's on your page layout there. Same thing goes with quotes, connections, accounts. If you're looking at a page layout, which when I say that, I'm referring to any of the, for example, it will always give you the name of the object in the top left corner. So I'm looking at the quote object. All of these fields here are on the quote object. If I'm looking for something to do with, oh, who is it that, they had the loan with? Is it Shea Mortgage or somebody else? If I come over here, now I am looking at the financing object. Any of these fields that I see on here are going to be the financing object. So that's how you can kind of start and determine what fields you're looking for. The next option that you have is to look at other individuals' reports to see if anybody has built something that is very similar. You can search all reports and come up here and start typing something that might be unique to that particular report. If you're looking for something specific on activities, you can start to type and it will pull up all these different ones. Now, one of the things I always caution is, as you look at these, unless it is a corporate report and in one of the corporate folders, it does not mean that this has been a validated report and you should grab it and assume that it works 100% of the time. There are some of these that are basically considered attempts that went wrong. But if you look at one of these and it seems to be something that's been run recently, you may want to start with that. It's up to you. But I will typically start with a corporate report if at all possible. And if not, you may want to reach out to whoever created the report and ask them if, is this a report that has been working for you, just to be sure before you start to copy things. If you're going to go ahead and create a brand new report, all you do is come up here and say new report. This is where you're going to select your report type. And I apologize really quickly. I've got Janet is texting me saying, can you call me right now? It's urgent. So I really apologize. I'm going to go ahead and just pause for 1 second and make sure that she can hold off until 11. So I apologize. Hang on 1 second, guys.
Hey guys, in other news, while we wait for Amy, I'm looking at our division connection bank prospect rating. We've reduced the unmarked or unknown, the dash, to 7,485 connections.
What was it before?
It was massive. I'm looking it up right now
Wow.
on my email. It was nearly, I want to say it was almost 50% of the total, which is about 200,000 connections, 198,000 connections.
Wow. And which ones are these classified?
Prospect, they can be a B, C, D, E,
Right.
or
Okay.
F, or hot, and then not sure.
And which one has gone from 198 to 7? Sorry, you caught me off guard.
No, I think I need to look at the number where it moved from, but it was massive.
Okay.
It was like over 20,000 records or something that were unmarked. In other words,
Unmarked. That's
yeah,
what I meant.
unmarked. Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. Let me get back to this. So basically, on the report types, this is where you will want to take a look and see what are the objects you want to pull into your report, what fields are you looking for. So most often, people generally are looking at quotes and connections. That's where we live the majority of the time. Connections is going to have all of your activities. Quotes are going to have all of the buyer information. So if I look at my quotes, I have very simple, quotes with products, quotes with contingencies. There's a few other ones that are located. A lot of times I'll just search and find what I need. But what I'm going to do for purposes of this, because we have a limited time, is just open one that's already been done, and we'll take a look at some of the details on it. So for example, this one is the projected closings report that we have. It's quotes with financing. When I look at everything on the left-hand side, this is where I'm going to start building my report. By default, whenever you create a new one, it gives you some things to start with. By no means do you have to keep those. Most often, they're things that we don't use, especially if you look at the connections, because in Salesforce, a lot of people are using connections as, trying to score a deal and write, possibly a renewal contract. So it'll have renewal date and some of the things that we don't use at all. So you can just start removing those that you don't need. But on the filter side of things, this is where you're going to look at what is it that you want to see. It's pretty self-explanatory, very similar to the list views, where you can go through and select your division, select whatever information. This is a projected close date in the next 800 days. you can use as before. You can use next days, next months. You can also use the to and from calendar dates if you prefer that method as well. If it's something to do with the week range, you can use that. One of the things on here that most people haven't discovered yet that can be useful is you do have the ability to do filter logic. What this will allow you to do is if you want to have something where it's or, so for example, you would like to see something where the projected close date is in the next 800 days or the last 30 days, then you can use logic and say if this, let me do this real quick, with the projected close date, and I would like this one to be less than, let's say, last 30 days. And I'll apply that. When I come up here and say that I want to add filter logic, now I want to do 2 or 5. And then I can get rid of number 5. So when I do that, it's taking a look and it's saying, okay, I want it to be this or this. So it allows you to change your filters up a little bit. Sometimes this can get confusing. I tend to, if I'm building it, I'll always put them right next to each other. So I would not normally do a 2 and a 5. I would have the filters so that I can say 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 and 5. It's one of those things that you'll start to learn more as you play with it, and once it breaks, you'll fix it. But it is useful in cases where you want a little bit more intelligence built into your report, and it'll let you know if you do them incorrectly. So I didn't do parentheses correctly, so it wants me to add those in. Another thing to keep in mind when you're working with the filters is that if you have something that you don't want it to be null, I'm sure most of you know you can do the exclamation or the quotes, and that basically says you do not want the cancel date to be null. You want it to have some sort of a cancel date. Over here on the outline side of things, when you see the grouping of the rows, what that does is that groups and provides a subtotal. But the more important piece about it is it allows you to do what I was showing yesterday about how you can filter very easily with the checkbox. So when I run this one, because I have it grouped by community, and I have no results. Let me get rid of this right here. Whatever it's grouped by, the very first thing will enable you to have the checkbox for filtering. So if you're creating a report for your community, and let's say you have the CR names listed here, rather than having each CR create their own version of the same report, if you create one for everybody, they can come over here and check their name very easily. It's ignoring me. There we go. And hit drill down and apply. And now that report is basically catered to them. So it is useful because it keeps you from having to create multiple copies of the same report. And then if all of a sudden I introduce a new field, like just recently, a couple days ago, I created a field that's called preferred lender. So it's a checkbox that allows people to identify if they're using an outside lender, but it's a preferred lender, then it's a checkbox. Well, in some of these reports, if you had copied this and created your own version 12 different times, now there's 12 reports that have to be updated if you want to make use of that field. Whereas if I have it like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into all of your corporate reports and I'm going to add that field for you on here. And anybody that's using this particular version will have it automatically updated. But if you have copied it and put it somewhere else, then now every single one of those has to be updated manually by somebody else. So whenever possible, I highly encourage, if you have any type of a corporate or division, even a community level report, that's something where you would like your entire team to be using the same format, try to use these groupings to save you from having to create it multiple times. They still have the ability, if they come over and export to Excel, it's only going to show their community or their particular name. If it's only looking at, Amy's quotes, then it's only going to export Amy's quotes. So it's definitely an easier way and a cleaner way, and it will save you from having a lot of reports. So just keep that in mind as you're starting to build your own. Or if you're looking at a corporate report that's created and you say, this report is almost perfect, I'm going to copy it because I want to add in one additional field. And that's where you'll hear me say 100 times, please just reach out to Steve, Carrie, Nikki, Melissa, and say, hey, you know what, can we get this column added? And as long as it's agreed upon by the division, everything in your active lifestyles corporate reports folder is strictly for active lifestyles. So you'll find if you open one for Southern California, it's very likely going to look different than yours. And that's okay. It just depends on what everybody wants to use. Those reports, I do not need to go to the developers to ask for changes. It takes usually, depending on the change, it takes anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, and I can do it very quickly. And then everybody's able to use the same report, and you're not stuck with copies of everything. So a lot of times I do see copies of the projected closings reports, and I always ask people, I'll open it up and I'll notice that maybe the walkthrough dates were removed, and that's it. If that's the case and nobody cares about them, let's just remove them from your version. It's very easy to do. And then these will always be maintained. So anytime new fields are created or anything's changed, they will be updated automatically. So just something to keep in mind is that filter over there is very useful. You can group by as many items as you want. So you can continue to group, for example, on the appraisal report, it's by community, and then it goes down to model. So you can have it up to, I believe it's 3 is the maximum that it will give you of groupings, which basically just does what it says. These are all the ARIA plan, and these are the lots that are that. So it creates a summary, allows you to have a subtotal. Only the first one in your list gives you that checkbox that you can drill down, but you can continue to summarize as far down as you want for about 3 different columns. And then the same thing applies to the rows. So if I go to my next group of items in my outline, you'll see there's the group the rows and then the group the columns. So if I want to have, typically it would be used for something like maybe events, and you want the event types to be listed at the top, then you could group the columns by event type, and then it would create a grouping of your columns as opposed to a grouping of your rows on the left. Very similar to how Excel would function in creating a table. So that's another option you could do in here, is grouping your columns. Down here, this is basically just the list of every single thing that you want to appear on your report. So you'll start to search for different things. If you're using multiple objects, as this one is quotes, if you had one that was quotes with financing, if you start typing something, you'll notice up here there is the quote, and then if I was to scroll down further, it will list all of my financing objects. So if you ever have something like community that will often be in multiple locations, you may see the quote community and then connection community. Now, it would be a big problem if they were not the same, but you can pull in either one of them onto your report. It does not make a difference. It's just that if we have the same field on multiple objects, it will show it on there twice. As you start to look for your fields, it does not matter if the word comes at the very beginning or in the middle, so you can search for, sale, and it will pull up actual sale date, contract sale date. Again, as you see down here, here's the example of the ZZ. Do not use those. I have gone through, and as I do more reports, I'm trying to put more letters in front of ones that do not apply to Shea Homes. So if you see those, do not use them. If you have it in an existing report already and you notice that you have a column that all of a sudden says ZZ in front of it, it likely just means that you've got the wrong field in there. So I would recommend coming into your columns and searching for something very similar. In this case, actual sale date versus actual sale. So if I search for sale, I can see, oh, this is probably the one I should be using. And as I mentioned before, you can always cheat and go and look at the actual page layout, and the name of the field that you want will be on that page layout. So if you were to go to the page layout, you're not going to see actual sale with parentheses reporting and then have your actual sale date. It's going to say actual sale date. So those are the ones that we want to be using in our reports. These obviously will just display in whatever order. You can drag and drop them, move them around, change them up. Down here, you'll see there's these summary formulas. So you do have the ability, it's very, very limited what you can do in terms of summaries and formulas, but you can add a summary formula, which will give you the list of fields that you can choose from. So for example, the one I have over there is the Shea mortgage capture rate. So I started finding my field. Here's my Shea mortgage. I can insert the field that I want to look, so my sum of Shea mortgage, and then I would like to get the proper percentage. I want to know how many of my Shea mortgage out of my row counts. And I want it to be a percentage, and I want it to be, I'll just go in here and open this one up. The Shea mortgage capture percentage, 2 decimal places. Here's where I put in my formula. It literally gives you the bare minimum. You can do times, plus, minus, and divide, and that's about it. So if you are somebody that, likes to use Excel, and most people hate it, so that's okay. If you love it and you're used to creating fancy formulas, you will not have that ability in here. It's very limited. It's mostly just plus, minus, multiply, just to give you some very basics. But they are available for you to use if you wanted to create something a little bit different than just, a count of a field. So again, if you need, you can also see there's another example, percent contingency. So you can create some summary fields, and those will just appear at the very end of your report. Now, if you have the interest in adding charts to some of your reports, you can do that as well. If I click on the Add Chart button, it's going to give me a list of different types of charts that I can add in here. Now, this report would be a terrible one to make a chart of because it has far too many variables. If I look, for example, at I would say maybe a cancellation report, something like that might be useful. I just got stuck. So here's a quote cancellation report, and I could add a chart to this one. And for example, this is going to tell me it's right now, it defaults to give you whatever it thinks you might want to see, and you can update this. This is telling me my sum of total deposits by community, not something we would actually look for. But over here you have the chart properties, and you can change what is on your y-axis, what is on your x-axis, and what type of a chart you want. If you want a donut chart, you can change it. Again, some of these reports, they don't look well in charts because they're not necessarily designed for that. But if you did want to add something, I have a couple of them that are on dashboards that the charts make more sense. This one is just telling you how many cancellations by community, so that might be of interest. You can do a donut chart so you can see which communities are taking up the largest piece of the donut. So again, that's kind of the charts. They're not extremely beneficial on most of the reports that we do, but when you're creating dashboards, that's when they become useful. We have not gotten into dashboards at all, and mainly it's because each dashboard is essentially built up of multiple reports and displaying the information, so we need to get our reports dialed in a little bit better in order to create useful dashboards. I know some, I believe Arizona created a really nice one, and I think they've shared it with some people, other divisions, and that's great. I know that we owe you guys definitely a better version of a dashboard and a homepage that's more useful. So those are yet to come. One of the reasons that we have not done it yet is, as I mentioned on the last call, the activities, the way that we record them, which a lot of times is what we want to report on. Um, it has multiple levels. It's very difficult to explain, but basically we have, a task type, a task subtype, event type, event subtype, and all of these different levels, but they're not exactly on similar playing fields when it comes to tasks and events. So Salesforce requires us to have a task type that we don't get to pick. And that extra level makes it very difficult to do reports. So we had back in, gosh, I want to say October or November, we had developed a solution, and then with everything else going completely sideways, we kind of didn't get a chance to implement that solution. I have brought it back, and I have it in our sandbox currently. We're working through it, and I hope to have a better way of reporting on activities coming out within the next like 30 days at most. Um, as I said, we're going through the testing to make sure what we had done is correct. I need to have Steve's going to go in, and he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to send him some reports to take a look at and kind of confirm that we've captured it, because the ideal result is that you are able to create your own activity reports looking the way you'd like them to without them having to be custom. I just released recently the custom report that is simply a count of activities. And I did mention to the team that that's something we can't have custom. There's no reason. Salesforce is designed to be, very good at reporting activities and monitoring your backlog and all of your connections and your prospects and keeping track of them. And we should be able to take advantage of that without custom reports, because those do take any time that I need a change, it's 2 weeks. If I need one built, it's a whole new project. So I want to keep it standard so that you are able to create, the reports that are useful for your team, and not have to rely on kind of a standard report that works across the company, because there is no such thing when it comes to activities. Everybody's a little bit different. I know there's tours that are done at, well, not currently, but the tours are done at Active Lifestyles, and that's very important. Whereas, a division like Southern California, they do not have a golf course. There's nothing to tour. It's just, this is your house and that's about it. So that kind of report is not beneficial to them at all. So that being said, I also wanted to take a minute to go over the looking at a report like this, the cancellation. This is a good example of when you might want to look at using a list view instead of a report. So if I look at this particular report, all of this is just quote information, and it's just listing the details about the cancellation. So unless you're looking for a reason to possibly export this report and do something with it, but if it's more so as management and I just want to check out the activity and what's been canceling, if you go under the list views and go to your quotes, I can pull up a list called canceled quotes. Every single one of those fields is right here on my list. So I can see the reason they canceled, the cancellation notes. I can pull in the deposits. I can pull in the refund amount, the sale date, the cancel date, the community. Everything is available. I can use my filter over here to change the range of what cancel date I'm looking at. So now I've basically created a report, in essence, in a list view. But the nice part about this is you don't have to go into the report and run the report. You can just come over here and refresh and always see the latest and greatest. So you can make this be this month, last month, this year, and just check this on a regular basis. You can save it as one of your favorites and monitor cancellations. You can do the same thing for if you just want to see what sold last week. You can create a list view of the sales and have the date range be last week, and just consistently come in and keep an eye on what's going on. So sometimes we jump to the reports because we think, oh, well, it has notes, it has reasons, it has things on there that I want to track. all of that information is still available in a list view. So it doesn't necessarily mean the list view is the preferred method, but I just wanted to mention that sometimes using these list views is a much easier way because it's fast. And you can temporarily filter it, then you can come back in and change it later on, and you're not having to do a save as and copy or anything like that. So that was just the one example I had of a report in the cancellations that for the most part, individuals are not running this report, and it makes sense because all of this information is the same information that you can get right here. So that's kind of the example of when you could use a list view and get the same information as a report. All right, so I'm going to take a minute to stop talking because I've been going on and on for a while. Are there any specific questions on some of the reports, things that you are challenged with, or if it's more just a random question that comes up as you're building them and it's easier to reach out as we go, that's fine as well. Or if any of you have any reports that you're struggling with that we can bring up and take a look at. And if not, then if there's other questions related to Salesforce, we can do those as well.
Amy, this is Bree. Do you mind? I'm sorry, I had a little bit of lag. I was trying to follow you on drilling down on a report, say by the owner, the CR. I tried to play around with it. Can you show me that one more time?
Yep. So when in the building section of it, if you're actually building the report, it's taken care of up here. When you're in the outline section and you see group rows, this is what's going to offer up the checkbox for you to filter. So in this, you would have your owner's name or sales rep or whatever it is that you were looking to filter by. And as soon as you add that, whatever is your first column is going to be what it is grouped by. So I have community and then sales rep. If I wanted the sales rep to be what I can filter, I'm going to move that to the top. And then when I click run, now I have the sales rep as my first column here, and I can just check any box. So if I am Jessica, if I click on that box right there, in the top, you'll see a new button that says drill down.
Okay.
Select that and apply. And I have no results because I picked a bad one. But let me.
And this is okay for us to teach the CRs to do this so that we're not recreating a dozen reports for everyone? I'm worried that they're going to screw up
Well, they won't have to do anything other than check their name. So typically unless they're actually creating the report, in which case they can do, if they're creating it, they'll have rights to do anything they want anyways. But if you create the report, there is a hierarchy that kind of looks at if a manager creates a report, a CR will only be able to modify certain things. So they won't be able to go in and click on this edit button and start messing with what you've done. And I did forget to mention that if there is something you want to ensure nobody can touch, in the filters right here, this little padlock means that it's locked. So for example, when I created this report, I did not want somebody to be messing with the division because this is Active Lifestyles version. So when I created the report, there's a checkbox here called locked. If you click that and hit apply, they will never be able to change that filter. If it's something that you want them to have the ability to change, for example, the cancel date, you leave that unlocked, and that's something that then they can change when they click on filters. So if you set it up and you put the sales rep as the first person in here, or if you put the community, when they open up the report, they're going to see everything listed like this. When they do the drill down right here, this is just something that automatically appears on there. I was showing you on the edit where you would set it up if you were creating the report. But for example, on this report that's already set up, this exists. They will just come in, click drill down and apply, and it'll be set up for them. The way to undo this, because it isn't a permanent filter, if I click on the filters, all it did was add this for me. I delete that, and it's back to everybody. So it is definitely safe. This is what is done on a lot of the corporate reports that I've created. So for example, on like the appraiser report in Southern California, initially they were going to copy it and create one for every community to be with a filter that just had their community name. Well, I discovered the appraisal report was incorrect. So I fixed the corporate one, and then there was 12 other ones out there. So that was a really good example of why not to copy it.
Right.
So there is no way that they can break it by just selecting their name and hitting the drill down. It's basically a user-friendly way of applying a filter.
Right.
But if you try to explain that they need to come over here and add a new filter, that requires them editing the report, adding a filter, and things like that usually don't go well.
Right. I was talking about, you pulled up the projected closing report and then you had it by CR, so that you use the example for the preferred lender checkbox so that you could just go fix that one corporate report.
Yep.
And I see how you can drill down by community, but if one of the CRs wanted to just see their projected closings, I thought you did that earlier in this broadcast.
I didn't in this one. That right now, because you can only select one, but if that was the way, for example, that Active Lifestyles wanted to see this report, if it was more important to, instead of being filtered by community, to be filtered by sales rep, we could very easily change that, and I could make the sales rep the first thing.
Nah, this makes perfect sense. If that's the case, you can just drill down by one thing. I think community is good, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that is the one rule, is that you can only have that drill down feature for the first item that you group by, but you could still have the sales rep in here so that they might have to look at other sales reps as well, but it would still group by that. So if I run this now, now it has my community. Let me get rid of this chart because I don't like it. Now it has Barcelona, and then it has Kyle and Matt, for example. So they can't exactly drill it down to just theirs, but you could group it by theirs so that it's easier for them to say, okay, I'm at Barcelona, I'm going to drill down to Barcelona, now these are just Kyle's and these are Matt's.
Got it.
So again, you may find reasons that, especially if it's a report that has massive amounts of information by community, that it makes more sense to have it filtered by sales rep. But if it's something where that's the case across the board, then we should probably change your corporate report to have something that sorts the way that it functions for Active Lifestyles. If that's different than other places, that's completely fine. However, if it's something that, it makes more sense to filter it by community, and then they might have to, go in and have a sales rep in there. The other option is to add a new filter that is not locked. So that would be a case where I could say, okay, I'm going to delete the sales rep here. I'm going to add a new filter for sales rep. The hard part is you have to put in a value. So I could say not equal to blank, which means it has a sales rep. Now when I run this report as an end user, I don't have to go in and edit it, but because this is not locked, I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want this to be contains, and I remember seeing Kyle. Now I only have Kyle. So that's another way if you want to allow your users to have an additional filter that they can apply without having to change the report. So now if you have this sales rep, when I come into this report, I can type my own name, and I'm not going to have anything. But then if it was, I think the other one was Matthew. So now I've got just Matt's on there. So that's another option of how you can allow people to continue to drill it down without having to create a whole new report, because this is not a locked filter. So no matter who I am, I can come in and change this, and using contains is safe. Obviously, if you have people with similar common names, you have to be careful. Like, for example, I know there's an Amy John, and then there's a John, I can't remember his name, but if you type John, you're going to get both of them. So. Any other questions on any of that?
Amy, in list view, there's no way to print a list, right?
There is, it's a very ugly list view for some of them. So other than the, let's see, if I go to, so some of them will have this printable view in the top right corner. It depends on the list view. It will never allow you to print a like recently viewed. That's one it won't allow. But if you see this button, you can print it, but it's intentionally not user friendly. It literally looks like this. And you can do a maximum of, I believe, I think it's 1,000 records. Yeah. So you can do maximum of 1,000. And again, this was done intentionally. Salesforce does not believe in exporting to Excel for a list view because it wants you to update everything in the list view. It does not want you to be doing things outside of Salesforce. So I've looked it up. They have no intention of ever making list views something that you can export. In the world of Salesforce, they're saying we've given you every ability to edit information on the list view. You can mass edit, you can filter it. If you need to update something, you should be going into the connection and updating the information or updating your list view. So they intentionally do not make it an option. I've asked. All right, I don't hear any other questions. Is there anything, we have just a few minutes left, anything in regards to the other aspects of Salesforce that you want to review? If it's quickly, we can go over it now, or if you would please do me the favor and send me an email that just says items that people are struggling with. Again, now is the time because we have the opportunity to go in and make some significant changes. There's some features coming up that were mentioned long ago. I wrote down everything when I went into all of the training. So as I've mentioned before, there's, the ability to create a quote for a plan that doesn't have a lot available at the time. That's something coming down. I know that one of the communities, I believe it's either Lake Frederick or Lake Norman, I apologize, but one of them has requested, I think since 2016, for the ability to, if you have select an option, for example, like room 2720, and it makes a change in the number of stories that you have. For example, if you add a casita, then that's going to add a bedroom and a bathroom. So being able to select that option and have it reflect the change in square footage, the change in plan and elevator, or the change in room count and bathroom count without having to create a separate plan in the world. That's something that is finally you know, we've worked on that, and I should have that out and about in the next month or so. So now is the time. If you have things that you would like to request, please do so. You know,
Hey, Amy.
yes.
Sorry, this is Melissa Tolson. I had sent an email a while back, and I'm probably not the only one, but some way of simplifying the whole, when you create a person account and a connection and a reg card and a unit of traffic, and you have to change the owner for every single one of those at the same time, or in, you know, each one you have to change the owner for. Is there anything in the works to simplify that?
Is that because, and I think this is probably because it's strictly a active
Because of
lifestyles because you have
competitive floor.
TCAs. Is that what it is? So the TCA enters it and we need to change it?
It's also
Yeah.
because of competitive floors, because you have individual ownership.
Right.
So we can work on that. What would be helpful is if somebody, either you or Steve or anybody, can send me a list of what are those areas that you're changing the owner on. So if it's the connection, the reg card, the traffic, because what I can probably do is create something that is basically, you know, change ownership of the entire connection, which would then grab, you know, all those fields you're talking about. I'm just not sure which are the exact ones that would need to be changed all at once. So if you have a list of those, then we can definitely do that.
You pretty much nailed it. It's those 3 or 4, but I will send you an email about it.
Perfect. Plus the email also is my memory. I'm getting
Yep.
old, so.
Same. I do it. That's how I work too. So. Thank you.
All right, no
So,
problem.
Amy,
Yes.
Amy, early on you mentioned a report that would show maybe how many times a certain option was selected. Has something like that been created? Is
I'm
it in
working on
there
it.
that we? Okay, you're working on it, and it was Lake Frederick that asked for that other report that we're anxiously awaiting. So thank you for that.
Yep. Yeah, and the one with the options, that was just something, it was a great suggestion. I have one created in Business Objects, which is a different reporting tool that California, I provided it to them and to the purchasing agents, but there's no reason we can't build it in Salesforce now because of the way we have things set up. So I'm working on getting that one done as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And then the last one, I think I sent it to everybody on this call, the activity one that's new. As I mentioned, I know that it's very kind of basic and general, but this should at least somewhat help with being able to look at what people are doing and the activities. So it's just a very simple what's been done, an account of all the different activities. But if you do happen to notice, we do not have the ability to exclude certain users. So you may see, for example, if a online salesperson just happened to record a call or something at your community, they might have one activity at the bottom. So you can just disregard those. But all right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I will let you guys get back. Stay safe and healthy out there, and I will look forward to, if you have anything, please send me any suggestions for Thursday. And if not, then as I mentioned, we may, you know, call on a couple people and try to test your skills. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.